Hi, I'm Catherine Crockett, President of the Monterey Peace and Justice Center. Welcome to a special program with guest speaker Dr. Don King, presenting a pediatrician's perspective on climate change. Dr. King is a retired pediatrician from Salinas who brings a 50-year perspective to this presentation. He began his pediatric training in 1970, soon followed by becoming a father and eventually a grandfather to 9 grandchildren. He began his private practice in Salinas in 1976. His volunteer and community work included organizing the Monterey Bay chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility in 1980 and advocating for the Children's Car Seat Loan Program in 1983. After retiring from practice, he became a docent for the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. When the COVID pandemic stopped that public contact opportunity, he shifted his focus to our climate crisis and became involved with the Climate Reality Project and received their intensive training program online. His goal now is to share his perspective, hoping this will help us change our collective perspective to help make the culture change we needed to fight this climate change, thus giving us a way out of the climate crisis. Welcome, Dr. King.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you and having the opportunity to make this presentation. And thanks to you, Catherine, and all of the members of the Monterey Peace and Justice Center. I know that you're working to help us all with what is needed at this time of crisis and help us make the changes necessary to respond to our new climate reality. As you and our fellow citizens of the world know and are doing, we will share this information, we will act upon it, and be part of the culture change that's needed now. And thanks to you, the viewers of this video recording, you can act by sharing this video with others. You can be alarmed and concerned and connected with others to help us make the culture change that is needed now. I'd like to present video recordings that I received from the Climate Reality Project. I hope this information and perspective I present today will help you want to work with others to change our abuse of our atmosphere to help meet the challenges of our climate crisis. I will start how my own perspective has changed. I went from being concerned as a pediatrician, a father, and a grandfather for what may affect our own children immediately to what global problems will impact generations to come. Next, I will present information which will show how and why we must change in response to the climate crisis, how we can change, and how we will change. And a new perspective on our atmosphere and the climate it creates will help us to create the culture change needed to correct the damage we have done to cause the climate crisis. This first image, as I go to screen share, is of the planet Earth as seen from space. I use this image to in my presentations with Physicians for Social Responsibility to emphasize the dangers of a nuclear bomb anywhere on our Earth to everyone on what I call this lifeboat Earth. When I learned of the dangers of the climate change, I realized a new perspective would be needed. We need to understand this need for change by learning the new reality of our climate and what we are doing to it. So how we must change and how we can change and how we will change. And this new perspective that I think we need to focus on is this, showing our atmosphere. This atmosphere produces the climate that sustains all life on Earth. As you can see, it is thin and fragile. In fact, if you could drive a car at freeway speeds straight up from the surface of the Earth, you would leave our atmosphere in 5 to 10 minutes. I remember during my life, the fight to get clean indoor air. We demanded and smokers agreed to not have smoke in restaurants and airplanes. That was a culture change that happened on a small scale. Now we need to demand that we not pollute our outdoor air. We have been treating for centuries our atmosphere like an open sewer. We have learned not to pollute our land and water with our waste. Now we need to stop treating our atmosphere like this open sewer. This slide shows the known sources of greenhouse gases from human-caused sources. Scientists have known for centuries and warned us about this, the greenhouse effect of the carbon dioxide and methane coming from the burning of fossil fuels. These human sources are easy to measure and are well known. This image of those human sources also shows one image of labeled as the thawing of the permafrost. This is referred to commonly in the climate literature as one of the tipping points, which if this permafrost thaws, that will allow the stored carbon from centuries upon centuries in the past to rot and produce carbon dioxide and methane. Methane being 26 times more powerful as the climate warming gas than CO2. I call these tipping points known unknowns because we don't know to what extent and how rapidly they will happen. This image shows this green band of forest that is a portion of the boreal forest that's in Canada, Alaska, and throughout Siberia. But below that is this black, which is the stored carbon from the centuries upon centuries of past plant life and animal life. If this should thaw and start rotting and releasing the carbon dioxide and methane that I mentioned previously, this could lead to, in fact, runaway global warming out of human control. But humans have done the global warming that we're experiencing now up to this point. And it really started with the Industrial Revolution back in the 1800s, but really exploded with the worldwide industrialization after World War II, as shown in this graph. Now, the human warming of the atmosphere and the climate is depicted by this slide, which represents the 140-year average of global surface temperatures. And if you follow the line of the colder years on average through the 1940s and 1980s, where some years were warmer and some years were cooler, you can see that basically you can create a straight line from around 1900 to the present time of ever increasing global surface temperatures. And of course, this has resulted in the hottest years ever in human existence over the last 20 years. This slide produced with data up through 2019. Data from 2021 was just released showing that that year was the 6th warmest year during the life of human civilization. And one effect of that warming has been warming of our oceans. And it's not just the surface that's warming, it's warming at all depths. As you can see from this graph, over the last 20 years, it's been accelerating. Now, as the ocean warms, it expands so that the human-caused global warming has been causing our sea level to rise. With that warming and the sea level rising, it will eventually be impacting all of the cities and populations and agriculture along our coastlines. One of the known unknowns, should it occur, would be the ice sheets that are on Greenland and in the Antarctic. If those ice masses that are outside of our oceans start melting and significantly contributing to our ocean level rise, this will be impacting all of these coastlines. And in addition, as the Earth warms, that's when the fire dangers increase, as we've been seeing on the west coast of this continent, it's been occurring in Canada and Alaska and throughout Siberia as well. And as we warm the atmosphere, that produces more extreme weather events. And when you add up the contribution of those extreme weather events from both storms and floods and extreme temperatures, both hot heat waves and cold dipping down from the Arctic, like we saw in that freeze in Texas a year or two ago, this is going to affect our agriculture, our populations, and in fact, causing deaths. Now, the cities that are along our coastlines can be ranked by the assets at risk. And in that metric, Miami is actually one of the leading top 10 cities at risk from sea level rise. Recently, Miami actually spent $500 million just increasing their pumping capacity to deal with king tides and storm surges. But we tend to forget as Americans that these mega cities around the world have millions upon millions of population. And should they be at risk, they will be forced, their populations to move, producing what we call climate refugees. So when you add up all of the changes that can result from burning carbon and changing our climate, it really becomes beyond our ability to calculate and comprehend. That's why we need actions now to prevent these type of catastrophes. And we have always tended to underestimate our capacities when looking at new technologies and new sources of producing clean and sustainable energy. Wind capacity is just largely untapped at this point. And our solar energy progress has been constantly under-predicted. They missed the prediction the first 10 years from this 2002 prediction by 17-fold, and over the next 10 years by 121-fold. So this makes us realize that as our solar panel installations literally shoot off the graph, we have more capacity than we are giving ourselves credit for. And in fact, the cost of the solar modules are now coming to the point where they are competitive with the carbon burning, contaminating sources of energy production. This brings us to question, what is the true value of the technologies and energy productions that we currently have? Right now, the value is expressed in the stock market by a return to investors. But in fact, we are all shareholders in our future. And the true value of our investments in what we're doing now in our energy production and what we're doing in our societies and our cultures is better represented by considering all these other factors. And that's why I need to bring in this perspective that I think I bring as a pediatrician, because my perspective as a pediatrician reminds me of the value of lives saved by culture changes in the past, when and where new information and laws have been found to save lives. In 1970, I learned about the highway epidemic. We called it then a highway epidemic of children being killed and injured as passengers in car accidents. I assumed when safety restraints were available, all parents would rapidly adapt their use. Despite years of public education campaigns requiring all parents at our hospital who delivered babies in our hospital to watch a video of simulated crashes with mannequins representing children in these vehicles, who were the children unrestrained in these accident enactments. They were literally thrown about in and out of the vehicles. We even provided a loan program offering an infant seat to go home from the hospital. But only 50% of babies left our hospital safely. Within a month of a law requiring children to be safely restrained, virtually all the babies departed our hospital in a car seat. This represents one of the culture change, like the culture change that gave us clean indoor air and the culture change that we're advocating for our environment. This became a nationwide culture change by 1985, so that I can say that my children and their children are all now more safely transported on our nation's highways. The other big culture shift that I saw in pediatrics was with immunizations. 3 new vaccines against the major sources of bacterial meningitis transformed my practice from seeing 3 to 10 children per year with one of these life-threatening infections to no children getting bacterial meningitis in my last 10 years of practice. Even the routine infection of chickenpox was eliminated with the promise of eliminating shingles appearing later in life. Even more amazing, one of the most common forms of cancer in women is being eliminated by a vaccine today. We finally demanded children receive this protection with immunizations and protect their peers by requiring vaccination for children attending public schools. The military has been requiring their members and families of their members to be vaccinated since basically forever. The world now faces a pandemic with a COVID infection and a climate crisis. And they're very similar with the same issues. They're causing lives to be lost. Science is offering solutions. We need a culture change to assure all are provided with what is needed, with extra help from those who have the capacity and the resources to help. So will we change? We need a culture change with this new perspective, that it is literally true that our neighbors are ourselves in this global community on the lifeboat Earth. So we need to join those who are using their voices and votes and actions. The pediatrics perspective says, just as we demanded clean indoor air, we will demand a safe, sustainable atmosphere and climate. We will demand not only safety on our highways, but in our climate, which sustains all life on Earth. We will protect ourselves and those around us, namely everyone on this lifeboat. The experience of the last 5 years is that 70 to 80% of us will adopt what is needed. Others cannot or will not look up to see what is happening and what is coming. It remains to those who can see to act for the best interests of everyone and those to come. The pediatric perspective requires us to listen to the next generation. A good spokesperson for them is Greta Thunberg. She said, we need to act like our house is on fire, because it is. After the 2021 conference, she said, we do not need more blah, blah, blah. We need action. So the people alive today are the people who will be the ones to save humanity and to save our climate. Will you use your voice, your votes, and your actions to demand a culture to save our climate and act like the world depends upon it, because it does? Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your actions. And together, we will be the change needed to save our climate and everyone who depends upon it. Thank you.